If you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. This is my review for Halo 2, Episode 8, entitled Halo. Now, there will be a lot of spoilers in this, so if you have not yet watched the episode, you have been warned. This episode definitely finally delineates the kind of core canon from the Silver Universe canon, and I think that the show is kind of cut away a lot of the ancillary stuff while trying to drive back to a lot of the original content. So it'll be really curious to see what season 3 shapes into, considering so many of the ancillary storylines that we saw in season 1 and in season 2 come to a finality now. You're not going to look at my beautiful face because I am sick as a dog, and I don't want you to look at my big, red, drippy, runny nose. Instead, you're going to look at some world-class Halo Infinite gameplay. All right. So, major topics that kind of put this episode to me as the best Halo episode I have seen from the beginning of the season. And I know for a lot of you may consider that somewhat of a low benchmark because, let's be honest, the show did not live up to the hype or the expectations that many of us wanted it to be. That said, I've always enjoyed the show for what it was trying to be, and I always kind of filled in the gaps with my own knowledge and deep understanding of Halo lore. So even when something was appearing on the screen and they didn't do a very good job explaining it, I was able to fill in tons of the gaps kind of behind the scenes and kind of piece together the logic behind what was happening. Thankfully, in an episode like this, it really does stand on its own. You really don't need to understand a whole lot of anything else, except maybe a little bit at the end with the introduction of 343 Guilty Spark. But for the most part, this was, I think, one of the best ways they could have ended the show on such a high note. And if they do come back for season 3 and they do continue down this kind of weird Silver Universe path, I hope they take a look at the positive reactions they're receiving from the show, particularly from this episode. And I hope they take some of those themes going forward, because this was such a nod to the source material while putting its own unique spin on things between the music and the tension and the sheer amount of combat that we all wanted to see, all bundled together in such a great package. It's hard to even think that this is not considered the best episode of the series. We start, I'm not going to go through it in linear order. I'm just going to, like I said, I'm going to jump on a couple of the key points here. The first being the Flood. We finally get a chance to see what a practical version of the Flood would look like, and they are horrifying. As they discussed in the Halo Declassified show at the end, these Flood go through kind of 4 distinct transformations where you see the humans acting like a little bit more unnormal, like a little sweaty and wild. Then they get frozen. Then they get ultra-violent, and then they begin to morph with all these weird tentacles and appendages. And I loved how quickly things got out of control for Onyx and how quickly the Flood decimated everything. Now, in the source material, and I don't know what they're doing here, but in the source material, the Flood are this kind of global network, this parasitic network. And they all communicate with each other, and any knowledge that one sees, all of them infinitely are aware of, controlled by this overarching evil being known as the Grave Mind. I don't know if that's going to happen here or not. If it is, the UNSC is royally screwed because Paragoski gets got. And when the Flood absorb you, they understand instantly everything you know. They understand all of your military secrets and installations and code words and everything. So the Flood could very easily start using UNSC weapons against each other by detonating missiles, using launch codes, flying vehicles. I don't know how far they're going to take that in the show, but that was something that was, at least in the original material, which is what made some of the sacrifices by the characters in the Combat Evolved game in particular so incredible, because they were dying trying to protect those secrets. So the Flood is here, and they are now kind of the third pillar in this war now between the human and the Covenant, who is definitely the most menacing of them all. And I love that the music that played and how they filmed that whole fight scene and how the Flood came into existence. I love how that had so many nods to the original game. The music in the background was that same kind of piercing violin music that you first heard in the beginning of Halo Combat Evolved, the very first time you met the Flood. I loved how it slowly built up and turned into somewhat of like a horror movie, particularly when Soren was kind of running through the lower parts of the jail, and you had all of these kind of infected Flood forms slowly coming to life. I thought that was really well done. We did get kind of an odd moment with Kwan. I thought this would have been the way that they would finally have ended Kwan, but nope, Kwan's fate, she gets to continue on, unfortunately. So many characters died in the show, but Kwan will not be one of them yet. She somehow is spared by the mother, who I don't really know where they're getting that material from. It is implied heavily in the canon of Halo that some humans possess these kind of essences that allow other humans to kind of speak on their behalf. Kwan seems to have some sort of mythical power to be able to channel into almost like the Lord of Admirals, but this ancient tribe of, led by the mother, of kind of helping them battle the Flood. And she's actually able to kind of stop the Flood from attacking her, and she's able to get away. So Kwan's story, not quite done. I thought she was going to be used more heavily in finding the Halo. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. The portal that they showed early on, or the last episode, and that portal, and even in the beginning of the season when she was drawing on the rock wall, that all kind of was used up. So Kwan is in very uncharted territory as this lone protector for the planet Madrigal, which doesn't really even exist anymore. And I'm not really sure what is going on with her. We did lose Parangoski, as I mentioned. We lost Lara to the Flood. We lost most of the UNSC Onyx base. And we lost the final member of the Silver Team. And it was sad to see, outside of John, of course. It was a very noble moment for Kai to take the Covenant cruiser and basically slam it into another ship. Her final words, "This is going to hurt," as she slams it in, kind of almost reminiscent slightly of George's sacrifice in Halo Reach, similar but different. She was definitely, I think, the highlight. To me, she was one of the coolest Spartans, definitely outside of John. She was the one that was most fleshed out. So it's sad that her story ended, but as I had speculated, they were going to slowly kill off everybody to kind of make the way for John. It's supposed to be John's show. It's supposed to be John and Cortana's story. They're slowly kind of whittling away from everybody, and they're knocking people off left and right. So unfortunately, she's next. And I thought she had a phenomenal kind of hero sacrifice. That entire battle on the ship was amazing. Of course, they're saved by John. One of the best hero moments in the show when he kind of jumps through space, reminiscent almost to Halo 2, right? Flying through outer space, boards the ship, single-handedly kills like 14 Covenant, saves the day, rescues the team, that sort of thing. Kai still stays behind, obviously, to make the sacrifice, using the ship to slam into another ship, vices the spike. And, we're sad to see her go. We say Spartans never die, but, this one, unfortunately, drifting aimlessly in space at the end. Catherine Halsey gets infected by the Flood, another major derivation from the source material. Her daughter puts her essentially in cryo-freeze until they can develop a cure. There is no cure that I'm aware of outside of eradication of the food source, which is the whole reason the Halos existed. I'm not really sure the direction they're going to take there. But Catherine Halsey's character now taking a back seat. Again, if they are lining into more of the source material, you would not have a lot of Catherine Halsey stuff at this point. She wouldn't become prominent again until later on when Chief is off doing his Halo adventures and she starts working behind the scenes with Jul 'Mdama, starting to kind of build up that Covenant resistance. And they didn't really touch too much on the Great Schism that I thought they were going to last week. I really thought we were going to see more of Covenant v. Covenant. That did not come to fruition. So we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. We also saw a really amazing fight scene with John getting his revenge against the Arbiter. which was really, really well done. This Arbiter, not nearly as cool as the real Arbiter that we have in Halo canon today. But this Arbiter was the one who put an end to Vanek and was basically McKee's right-hand man who believed in her vision. He did get to set foot on the Halo, the Promised Land. Him and John have an insane sword fight, fist fight, knockdown, drag-out fight. Basically, he pleads for his death to be, swift sort of thing, and John definitely obliges. Energy swords right through his chest and kills him after soundly beating his ass. I mean, breaking his mandible, breaking most of his teeth. Spartans are no joke. And I thought that was a phenomenal way to kind of get revenge in a way for Vanek, because I loved Vanek and I was so sad to see him go. And I'm glad that Chief didn't go easy on him. I kind of wanted Chief to curb stomp him, honestly, and just smash his head, but I'll take an energy sword death any day of the week. That was really, really good. And then the show ends up with it's the same way it starts. John being interviewed by somebody, at least for me, somebody who's a fan of the material. I instantly knew it was going to be a monitor, and it turned out to be, I believe, what's going to be 343 Guilty Spark, or at least a monitor variant in this show. I don't know what the Silver Universe monitors are going to be called, but monitors are the caretakers of the Halo. He was basically interviewing John to make sure he was kind of quote-unquote worthy, similar to stuff you saw in the original Halo game, ramping up to kind of this Reclaimer saga. The idea that, only the quote-unquote pure can get in, and what is the real reason for the Halo ring being fired and the real power of the weapon to stop the Flood. Now that the Flood do exist, we still don't, the characters don't truly understand the power of the Halo yet, although in this universe, for some reason, they seem to have a lot of knowledge about what the Halos are going to do, although they haven't really kind of touched upon them yet. So I think we'll get a lot more of that in the next season. McKee has already gone through this kind of trial, I guess. She's already far ahead. We don't see her quite yet. I'll be curious to see how she plays out as well. Major nods to the game as I wrap up. What I thought was, like I said, the best episode of the show by far between season 1 and season 2. I mentioned the Flood music. There's a lot of instances of music. The Halo music hits in a couple times pretty hard. Particularly when John gets off, and actually he's on the Halo. He's standing next to Cortana, and he looks up, and you see the ring kind of fading into infinity up above him in the sky. That was definitely something that we saw a lot of in the game. You had that iconic teaser art of Halo Infinite where Chief was standing on the hill with his helmet down at his knee. Obviously, in the game, you don't see his face, but that exact scene was exactly recreated in the game. That iconic Infinite art of him standing there with his helmet down kind of around his side. During the fight with the Arbiter, he gets his 117 mostly seared off, definitely significant plasma burn on the left side of his chest, which is exactly what his armor looks like in Halo Infinite. So he had that iconic 117 armor, but the 117 is basically burned off. You saw that. You also saw him use a grapple shot in combat. He actually grapple hooked into the Arbiter to deliver some punches and energy sword swings and pistol blasts and such, which was really, really cool. I loved that the Arbiter almost immediately cut it away with his energy sword, which is exactly what I think normally should have happened in the Halo game, especially when you're grappling hooking a guy from like a mile and a half away and you're just flying at him, getting ready to do like a super punch, which I did find kind of humorous. So they kind of like nipped that in the bud just a little bit. But really delivered on all cylinders, I thought. So many nods to the source material, so many nods to kind of what the legacy of the show could be, with John being a total badass. Oh, I know the last one I was going to tell you. His helmet getting cracked. We saw his helmet getting cracked, similar to Spartan Locke headbutting him during the battle of Halo 5 Guardians. So a lot of those iconic moments in Chief's history absolutely made their appearance here. At the very end of the episode, after Guilty Spark 343 kind of clears John for approval to enter into what I believe will be Installation 04, Chief puts his helmet on, and you can notice that his left eye is completely exposed. So the helmet is completely cracked. That is a direct scene from one of the comic books as well. But it was cool that, despite how much wear and tear he's taken, he's still willing to move on. So really, really digging what the show became this episode. I have to give Paramount credit, at least in this season as a whole, that they did kind of fix some of the problems that we saw in the first season. They did clear out and delete some of the storylines that didn't matter. While I think a lot of the characters got deaths that were very unheroic or nonsensical, I was glad to see that a lot of the other characters did get kind of those big hero moments. I think the fall of Reach could have been handled significantly better, but it's clear to me that like 99% of the show's budget went into this episode. But this is the kind of content I think Halo fans deserve. And I hope that the show sees the insane amount of positive reaction from this episode. And when they work on what season 3 will be, they continue that. I cannot tell you how much glee it brings to me, and I know other Halo fans that I speak to on this, when we see a small nod that is very non important to the show, where it's a nod to the game and fans lose their mind. Like that scene with John standing there with his helmet down by his leg. I mean, everybody's like, oh my God, that's the Halo Infinite cover art. You know, like it's little things. A normal person who has no idea what Halo Infinite is wouldn't care about that. But a super fan loves that. And that's the kind of Easter egg and dialogue and, you know, words so easy. And these kind of like little fun, give me a weapon. I need a weapon. Or, you know, bet you can't stick it. Like these are the quotes. These are the lines. These are the iconic things that have made this franchise still pop after 20 plus years. And it's nice to see when they kind of pay tribute to that. So we'll see what the future holds. They haven't announced anything for season 3 quite yet, in terms of filming, in terms of if it's even happening or anything like that. But I hope it does. And I'd love to be back with you guys for season 3, episode 1 review. I hope you guys found this entire series interesting. Thank you again so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.